Hello everyone, welcome to a celebration of the life of Loren Nerell. I met Loren at Millikan High School in 1978. We were introduced by our mutual friend Joe Derry. Loren played the tuba in marching band, and he was in the jazz band. Loren also played Dungeons and Dragons. He was involved in the Fantasy Games Club at school. Loren and I were both serious Monty Python fans. There was enough nerds in our school that we were each in a different Monty Python club. But our primary connection was musical. We were both into progressive rock, but Loren turned me on to pure electronic music. It was through him that I learned about Tangerine Dream, Klaus Schulze, and Vangelis. Over the years, we went to countless concerts together and spent lots of our time and money collecting records. Here's Loren and our friend Mike McNally at a Grateful Dead show in Ventura. Loren was relentless in his search for new electronic music. In 1982, he discovered a cassette tape by a local artist named Steve Roach. And Loren convinced me to go with him to see Steve play in Venice at a little place called the Comeback Inn. It was an amazing show, and Loren struck up a friendship with Steve, and Steve suggested that we check out a record store in Claremont called Rhino Records. And so we drove out there, and we were just amazed by the selection of progressive music and electronic music and experimental stuff. So much so that we went back there over and over again. We met the owner, Chuck Oken, who became a lifelong friend of both of ours. I believe Chuck is probably here someplace. There we go. There, and if you see there's in the middle is the progressive and experimental section, next to the new age section. Yeah, it was a great record store. Still is. It's moved a couple of times and gotten bigger and bigger, but it's still going. So after high school, Loren and I both went to Long Beach City College. He was a year ahead of me. I started as a philosophy major, but that was up until Loren showed me the electronic music lab and the Moog modular synthesizer. So I immediately went into my counselor's office and changed my major to music and signed up for this class. And that really changed the whole trajectory of my life. Loren and I took all the electronic music classes that were offered there. We spent all of our free time in the lab, which the students called the Synth Lab. Our teachers were Grant Jeffers and Jeff Deckner, who may be here as well, I think. This was our textbook. At Long Beach City College also had a great recording program, so Loren and I took those classes as well. I got really involved in that and ended up getting my degree in audio engineering. Loren bought a mini Moog. He brought it over to my house. I was living with my mom still at the time and my grandmother, and she had an organ that she used to play church music. And so Loren brought over the mini Moog and put it on top of the organ, and then Joe came over with his flute. And I believe I had borrowed an Echoplex tape delay from school, and Joe was playing his flute through that. And I figured out how to play the melody to Pink Floyd's Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun on the organ. And so we jammed on that for like an hour and a half, my poor mother. But this was the first time that I realized that I could actually make music. Just a very important moment for me, all because of Loren. I was really impressed with Loren's bravery because he took out a school loan, a big one, and spent all of the money on synthesizers. And one of our teachers at City College was Tim Parsh. Tim owned a recording studio, and in 1985, Loren and I went over there to record Loren's first album, which was Point of Arrival. It was a cassette release, but it's later been released on CD. And Loren also bought an Oberheim XA, OBXA synthesizer, and then later actually went to work for Oberheim. Actually, around this time, I'm going to back up one. So that synthesizer buried in the sand there is just a shell. It was a reject that he got from Oberheim. Took it out and buried it in the sand. I think Sander might have actually taken that photo. Anyway, so yes, worked for Oberheim. Emmett Sinyard was another teacher from Long Beach City College, and he may be here as well, I think. he hired me to help him build a recording studio. And while we were recording it, while we were building it, before it was even finished, Loren was bringing his gear over, and we were recording there and testing the studio out. And there we are. Oh my God, I used to have hair. Yeah. Loren's grandfather owned a small duplex in Long Beach. And when he passed away in 1987, Loren moved in and then asked if I wanted to be his roommate. So I moved out of my mom's place. This was my first time living on my own, and we lived there for quite a while, for a couple of years, until Loren went to San Diego State to study anthropology. And that actually led him to Mexico, where he worked for a while as an archaeologist. And then after he moved out, I continued to live there. Joe moved in. He was my roommate for quite a while. Um, and then when Loren returned, he went to Cal Poly Pomona, where he got his bachelor's degree in anthropology. And Loren then went to UCLA for grad school, majoring in ethnomusicology. And this led him to travel to Bali, where he fell in love with gamelan music. And he also made some amazing field recordings there. There's this one recording he made. He went out early in the morning before it was light in the rainforest, and he set up. He had a DAT recorder, a portable DAT recorder, and he set up his microphones in the middle of the forest. And he was about equidistant between three mosques. So when they had the call to prayer in the morning, one by one, in addition to all of the frogs and the crickets and the birds, you started to hear this chanting from three different directions. It's just a beautiful recording. I think he used it as the basis for one of his pieces. Anyway, when he returned from Bali, he joined the Cal Arts Gamelan Ensemble, Gamelan group, and I think we have some of those people here as well. And he performed with them many concerts and festivals, all the way up to very recently. In 2002, I was teaching audio production classes at Cypress College when the department chair, Joe Gallo, asked if I knew anybody who could teach music history. And so I suggested Loren, and he got the job. So Loren and I taught together for a while. We'd pass each other in the hallway. Um, and then Loren began incorporating the sounds of Indonesia into his electronic compositions, and he created quite a unique voice in the world of ambient music, and a lot of people paid attention to that. Over the years, he released about 11 albums, at least full albums, and a bunch of other stuff, compilations and things. And these are his main recordings. UCLA also hired Loren as an audio technician, and at the time I was doing that same job at Cal State Long Beach, still am. So we shared our complaints about the bureaucracy involved in education and the lack of funding and the annoying faculty that we had to deal with. So yeah, that we bonded on that. In 2015, Matt Pogue and I started a group called Synth Lab, named after the lab at Long Beach City College. We put on many concerts of electronic music around Southern California. We're still doing that. And Loren was one of our founding members. Here's some photos of Loren performing with us at different venues. This is at San Pedro. Oh, here he is setting up his gear. And there he is. I have lots of photos of Loren performing. Here he is at a drone concert at Cal State Long Beach. And yeah, see how much gear we can get in one room. Oh, yes, and there's Loren and I and Sander after one of our concerts. So, you can watch all of the videos of Loren's performances if you just go to synthlab.org, click on artist, and then there's a whole section on Loren there if you would like to watch any of those. And our friend Chuck from Rhino Records also started a synthesizer store in Pomona called Analog Haven. It's now called Noisebug. And Loren worked there and performed there quite a bit. And here he is with Robert Rich, who I believe is here as well, and also with Steve Roach. Loren was also part of a group of my friends that my girlfriend calls Nerd Club, and this is Nerd Club here, and I think all of these people are probably here on the call. We get together and we make music, we swap gear, we go to concerts, we just nerd out. And we've been doing this pretty much consistently since, well, I guess we kind of started in 2016, but especially since the pandemic, we've been hanging out very consistently. There's Loren showing off a circuit board from an OBX. Here we are at the Eno documentary. That was a pilgrimage. And oh, here we are at the Synthesizer Museum in LA. That was a day. This group of people are also very serious record collectors, and so we would get together and have what we call vinyl parties, where everybody would bring their latest finds and share them. There we all are. And yeah, a lot of times we would meet in Chris's garage, which we can see in the background there, where Chris and Andrew are, which is just an amazing collection of music. And yes, there we all are. Recent record party. So during the lockdown, we moved our meetings online, of course, on Zoom. And we met pretty much every Friday from the pandemic up until, well, we're still meeting and been going on pretty consistently ever since. Loren. And then the last thing really I want to talk about is that during the pandemic, we started a thing where we would make mixtapes for each other, and we made a mixtape for pretty much every year, starting from the '60s and continuing up to 2022. And over the course of this, Loren made 50 different mixtapes, each one about an hour to an hour and a half long. And if you'd like to hear them, I'm going to drop a link in the chat here where you can go and you can listen to those. Loren, been one of my closest friends for, I looked at it, we're coming up on 50 years, and I'm just going to miss him greatly. So that's what I have to say. Now, before we move on, Chuck, oh, I have to move here. I can do this. Chuck Oken asked me to read this. Before I do, I want to just say a couple things. So, in addition to running Rena Records and Noisebug Synthesizers, Chuck runs a record label and is a member of one of my all-time favorite bands, Jean Carré. So here's what he wrote. Loren, what a journey we had. You and Richard plucked Jean Carré out of obscurity in the early '80s and sneaked us into the Long Beach City College recording studios. You tore my head open with effects and recording techniques. Without you both having faith and putting time into us over the early formative years, who knows if Jean Carré would have gone on and had the journey that we had. From there, it was an incredible time being in the tribe of Steve Roach from the beginning in the mid 80s. Thank you, Steve, for letting us be a part of so much of it. You were a spiritual older brother to Loren, and you have been a mentor as a musician and as a human being to many of us here. That is true. Loren, thank you also for the time you put into Noisebug from the beginning when some folks caught the Eurorack fever back in 2005. You always brought the LA Times newspaper to work, and I was always trying to make sure that you did not have enough time to read it. Your final album, How Dark is Dark, will be released this year, just as we discussed when you had lunch and when we had lunch and when you gave me the master tapes 2 weeks before you passed. You touched and affected many lives in a very positive way with your generous and kind spirit, and that is a good life. All right, so there we go. All right, we are back. Cool. All right, so now I would like to turn this over to Lee Pogue. Lee is Loren's cousin, and he is coming to us from Kentucky. And there you go. Hey, Lee.
Howdy. I have to say that that was wonderful. Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm stunned at how much I learned. and wish I'd learned much of it sooner. Uh, I need also to say that I will be referring to Loren's parents as Bob and Bobby because they were my Uncle Bob and Aunt Bobby. And I'll be referring to some photographs that I sent to Richard.
Can you see
Well,
this one?
I'll explain these quickly. That's me with my two daughters and Aunt Bobby. I think that's in 1983.
Hmm.
That's my eldest daughter and Loren. In 2003, we were visiting the house where our grandparents, that is to say, the grandparents I shared with Loren, lived in Westminster, which is not all that far from Huntington Beach. That is Bob and Bobby's wedding, 1955. Uh, the one little kid holding a woman's hand is my younger brother, Dennis. He lived with the Nerells for a time and died in 2024. And the slightly taller munchkin to his left, with a father's hand on his shoulder, is me. This is the Nerell family with my younger brother Dennis in it for a time. That may be the earliest photo most of you have seen of Loren.
Oh no, here we go.
Yeah, okay, that's Grandpa Herman and Grandmother Kate. He was born in 1876 and she was born in 1885, both of them in Kansas. I promised Richard I'd keep my remarks short and sweet, and I proposed discussing family, education, and music. I've decided, for shorter sake, to reverse the order. So I'll start with music. It's real obvious that you all know Loren's music much better than I do, though it's also true that my Aunt Bobby would send me his CDs as they came out. I know I don't have them all. I'm sure I will acquire them too soon because we will have to clean out the house. Uh, I've been playing some of them while I've been doing my next of kin duty and while I've been thinking about these remarks, and their serenity has meant much to me. I know music has many appeals. It is a rare human who doesn't need, enjoy, or make music. That said, I had to leave a bluegrass mandolin workshop early to get here on time. Uh, my younger daughter is a guitar player and banjo player and plays Mozart on the piano. Just got a new piano, by the way. Her son plays piano as well and plays cello in the Louisville Youth Orchestra, which is no small piece of work. My younger brother, of whom you'll hear more soon, became a luthier late in life. So there was a lot of music in the family. And I'm glad to report that music is a family trait and passion, though that hardly needs to doesn't stand as evidence for Loren's success and excellence. Education. Both Loren's father and my father fought in World War II. Uncle Bob was one of the Marines who landed at Guadalcanal. My father flew fighters in North Africa and Italy. Both my father and Bob used GI Bill benefits to go to college. Both Bob and Bobby taught in the public schools and the great expansion of education that followed the Second World War. I taught for 40 years, mostly at Iowa State University, and both of my daughters are professional educators. I say all of that by way of praising Loren's passion for learning and ideas and cultures about which Richard has said so much already. Now, I will talk about family, and this will get a little complicated, but I hope it'll tell you something about why I'm so stunned to be here talking to you now. some of what I prepared, I've already said by annotating the photographs. Uh, my mother died in 1957, but during the 50s and the early 60s, the family, plus or minus, would drive down from the Bay Area to visit my grandparents in Westminster. Uh, Bob, Bobby and my mother were the two youngest of five sisters, and they were all married and having babies. So very often, if we went to see the grandparents, there'd be this great gaggle of cousins. Uh, to the best of my knowledge at the moment, though I hope to be wrong, I'm the last one. Uh, so going to visit family was a great big to do. And for some of those, Loren wasn't even there yet. And for subsequent ones, he was still the youngest. So I didn't really get to know him very much during that period. Uh, my father died in 1983. Prior to that, both my brother and I uh, lived with relatives and foster families. In Dennis's case, that meant he spent most of his high school years with the Nerells, went to Millikan, like many of you. Uh, uh, and when I would go down then, and by this time I was old enough to drive, though it only cost $25 to fly round trip from San Jose to Long Beach at that point. So I would go down and visit, and I was visiting my aunt and uncle, and I was visiting my brother. I really wasn't visiting Loren. I'm 12 years older than he was, uh, and Dennis was 8 years older. So it wasn't really until 1983 when myself and my wife and my two daughters used my father's life insurance money to hop on Amtrak and travel out to Long Beach to stay with Bob and Bobby and Loren. And by this point, I think he was probably around 23 and going to college. And he suddenly became real interesting. That is no surprise, obviously, now. Uh, after that, uh, the crew of us became closer. I started writing more frequently to Bobby. Uh, I got more family news. Christmas presents started going back and forth. For a long while, every Christmas, Loren got a CD from me, as if he needed any more. But he did because I love music and I love to share it. I think the last thing I gave him, and this was not anywhere in the recent past, at some point we realized we were both so old that there wasn't much we could give each other that we likely didn't already have. But the last one I gave him was the Coen brothers movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Which, now that I think about it, you can talk about as a musical quite nicely. Uh, in 1993, I flew out to Los Angeles because I was researching the life and career of the writer and critic Susan Sontag, who did some of her growing up in that area, graduated from North Hollywood High. So for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I lived with Loren and Bobby. I'm not sure if Bob was gone by then. I think he was. Uh, and Loren drove me around. We went to UCLA Library and USC Library and spent a lot of time at North Hollywood High. I have a complete collection of Susan Sontag's high school journalism. Uh, Not that the world needs it at this point, but I've got it. Uh, and that was when Loren and I really bonded because we spent, all of our waking hours and working hours together. In 2000, my brother Dennis and now his Brazilian wife and Brazilian children flew up from Brazil and spent Christmas at Bobby's place. And I came out, and that was another family reunion, though a smaller one, but one that meant a lot to me. In 2001, my younger daughter spent the summer in Costa Mesa. and spent most of her weekends during that time at Bobby's place. So I'm really happy that she has some significant memories of Bobby and of Loren. And then in 2003, uh, the Pryor family, and that was Bobby's maiden name, had a big Pryor family reunion in Huntington Beach. So I flew out for that because at that point my eldest was living in Vista, which is north of San Diego. So I rented a car and we drove up to Long Beach and stayed with Loren uh, and attended the family reunion, which was very odd because no one recognized anybody. We all had labels and we would go around figuring out how all the labels worked and who was related to whom. And we capped that visit off by going to Dodger Stadium for a baseball game. At that point, we lived in Iowa, and the AAA club for the Cubs was in Iowa. So we used to see a lot of Cubs games, and I couldn't pass up the chance to see the Cubs in the flesh play the Dodgers. Don't remember the game much, but I do remember trying to get out of the parking lot at Chavez Ravine. We were there for well over an hour and a half, but Loren had a 6 disc CD player in the trunk of his car, and the music never stopped. And I remember a lot of Phil Collins as it happens. I don't remember every other title, but I remember that. Uh, One of my favorite movies is Wings of Desire by Wim Wenders. And Loren was the one who sort of got me into Wenders. Uh, I like it so much, I even like its LA remake, City of Angels with Meg Ryan and Nicolas Cage. Uh, so I'm going to close these remarks by imagining Loren as a listening angel somewhere near us, more likely of the LA persuasion of angel. In the last 2 decades of his life, he and I communicated almost exclusively by phone, our voices sort of floating in the digital ether. So if you're listening, Loren, I say Godspeed your journey and bless you always. You were a blessing to us. Goodbye for now. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. That was wonderful. All right. Deep breath. Okay. So next we have Cynthia and Shamala, I believe. If you want, both or one of you want to unmute.
Yeah, thanks, Richard and Lee, for your beautiful remembrances. Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Shamala, and I'll just say a little bit about my and our journey, me and Cynthia's journey with Loren, and then Cynthia will share a particular project that we did with him that we thought you all might enjoy um, to celebrate his creativity. Um, Loren was a part of my adult life, so it was neat to see some of the younger years with Richard. Um, but I was an undergrad at UCLA World Arts and Cultures Department, and he was a graduate student in ethnomusicology when we met. And, it was a natural friendship connecting our interests in music and dance. And as a young choreographer, I was always eager for new music, and he was so generous and gifted me all of his cassette albums at the time. So I had a little stack of all his cassettes and often played them in my car. Um, Years later, when I was part of the Postnatum collective with Cynthia, he became our go-to person for recording and composing. And he was always game for a new project. And he welcomed us into his home studio in Long Beach and was so patient with hours of recording and very skilled in his editing. And we always had Thai takeout to round it out. um, he has done a great deal of projects with us. A memorable one in my mind is always I had a person that I was working with who was a domestic violence survivor and had recorded her speaking her story for over an hour. And he took that recording and through all of his unique methods, modified her voice and transformed it into a piece of music that I could dance to. Um, he also collaborated with another of our friends who is a composer, often of Indian music, Ravi Deo. And together they created really unique hybrid music for us as well. So Cynthia and I wanted to share a little excerpt of his music that he created for us back in 2009. And this particular music, this project was so neat because I just remember him being so delighted and creative during the process of making it and bringing his diverse skills and passion to the table. So I'll let Cynthia share a little bit more about the project, which you can see an image of there on the screen too.
Hi everyone, this is Cynthia speaking. Can you hear me
I
okay?
mean,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna give a little just intro to the project and then we'll hear like a 3-4 minute excerpt of Lauren's music that he made for it. So just to let you know what's coming up. So this project was called, we think it was called Compromised Interpretation, but it might have been called Realized Opinion. Anyway, there's a beautiful installation artist named Yaya Zhou, who's originally from Taiwan, lives in LA, and she was really interested in animating her sculptural installations through dance and asked us to create something for this work of hers. Um, and then we invited Loren on to create music for the installation. And so, as you can see from this picture, there are these like balls that are paper mache, I believe, like hanging in space, sort of like planetary. And then the text on them is actually like discarded practice calligraphy, like Chinese calligraphy papers that her mom had done that are a lot of them are from like the Buddhist Heart Sutra, just to give like a tiny bit of context.
Wow.
And yeah, could you actually go to the second picture, Richard? Thank you. So, okay, here we are in 2009, looking young and cute. So that's Yaya on the left next to one of her giant balls, and then Shai and me, and then, of course, Loren. And we had a really delightful day where we went to Yaya's studio. And, the two of them, Yaya and Loren, had like this very rich conversation about process. And she talked about like taking material and deconstructing it and reconstructing it. And in my memory, he used some of those processes and kind of like translated them into his music, manipulation of sound and editing. But we also did a lot of recording of the actual like manipulation and making of the materials of the sculptures, which like was really delightful to see Lauren do. So these balls are created by like blowing up balloons, um, and then like paper macheing them and then popping the balloons. So if you could go to the next photo, Richard. Here's a really fun a picture from our process of Lauren recording the sound of this giant ball. And so there's sounds of the balls themselves, sounds of like the balloon popping inside of them. I believe probably sounds of crinkling and ripping paper. And so you hear all of these in the sound that he made, but it's all like processed through Lauren's electronic magic. And so of course it sounds very different than the original field recordings, and you'll also hear like a little bit of gamelan influence in the music that he made. So the original music he created, because it was an installation, that kind of like, so like for the first section we were kind of like moving around and people were milling around the gallery, and then there was like a moment where like folks sat down and like watched a show. So the music is like half an hour long, and then there's like a part that's a little more tightly choreographed towards the end, and so we're sharing a 3 to 4 minute excerpt from that section. Um, those of you who know Loren know his music sounds best with headphones. So if they're handy, maybe pop them in. And if not, just enjoy the music. Would you mind playing the slideshow whenever you're ready, Richard? That's what we have to share. We thought it would be nice to share some of the music that maybe only we have access to. I'm sure all of you have his albums, but he was such a diverse composer who like works so beautifully collaboratively with so many folks, and we wanted to just share a little insight into that with a lot of warmth and fondness.
Well, thank you so much. That was wonderful. So, somebody in the chat,
Hi, it's Eliki.
Aliki, there we go. Yes, you wanted to say something?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Eliki Valencia, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Buratwangi Gamelan Group. We are the Gamelan Group at Cal Arts, and I can't tell you how much Loren meant to us. Sorry. He's been a member for decades at our Gamelan Group, and he's a beautiful soul. I don't know what else to tell you, but um, he was always there, always ready to be with us, always ready to learn. And, you know, I'm an Indonesian, so I am very appreciative of Loren's interest and love to the gamelan music. Just so you know, Loren didn't only, oh gosh, I have to speak about him in past tense. He didn't only learn Balinese gamelan, but also Japanese gamelan. So those are two different things. And Loren was very interested and very passionate about the gamelan music from Indonesia. So as an Indonesian, I'm very, very appreciative of that. And I thank Loren for all his love and acceptance of Indonesian culture. And of course, we love having Loren there all the time at our rehearsal. And I don't have pictures of Loren. I'm so sorry, but it was just so sudden. I didn't prepare anything. But some of our members are here attending this celebration of life, and we just wanted to thank Loren and the community for the support of our gamelan music. Thank you, Richard.
Oh, thank you. That was very nice. All right. Well, that's all the prepared stuff we have. Oh, before I forget, if you look in the chat, I just put a link to Lauren's mixtapes. So if you want to know what Lauren thought was the best music of any year, basically, you can do that. And is there anybody else that would like to chime in? Just unmute yourself and let me know if you would.
I just sort of wanted to tell a funny story, because the way I met Loren was kind of an unusual way. We went to USC, and I met him when he was at UCLA, and I had taken a non-Western music class and fell in love with gamelan music, and I didn't know what it was. They just played me a recording, and a friend of mine had played in the UCLA gamelan, so he said, you could play the UCLA gamelan, just go down there. And I said, yeah, but I don't go to UCLA. And he said, well, just go down there and talk to them. So I went down to the UCLA gamelan and I sat there and I was going to talk to them, but then Naomi went and got up and said, well, if you're gonna, or maybe Loren did. I think it was Loren. Somebody said, because he was the TA, said, if you're taking this class for an easy A, this is not the class for you. We want you to work. There's too many people taking too many instruments. We don't want just random people in here just to think this is an easy class. And I was like, I should really leave now and give this instrument to a student, but I'm not going to, because I love gamelan and I'm going to sit here and stay and not tell anyone. And so I basically just kept playing in the class, and I ended up playing Rugal, and Loren was playing the other Rugal, and he kept talking to me just to be nice. And he said to me, oh, what are you studying? And I'm like, literature. I was like lying, completely lying. I was just like, and finally I was like, I'm really sorry. I am completely not a person that goes to the school. I just really love gamelan. And he said, there's so much turnover that, yeah, we need a couple of community members. And I think Patrick might be here too. He was one of the community members also, because otherwise it's just too hard with the turnover. And he goes, why don't you stay? And then he spent all this time, because, he was such a good Ugal player and I was not the best Ugal player. And he took time to teach me the parts and help me. And then he told me so much about everything else, about music. And I have all his tapes, about, cassette tapes too. And he was just this loving, wonderful person. And I remember when I was getting married, I was like, I really want to have a Javanese gamelan at my wedding. And he organized it, and he said, I don't know if it's going to happen because the person who's the leader, his wife's supposed to have a baby that day. And he goes, so it's going to be touch and go. And I said, okay, well, just let me know. And then they were there, and I had this beautiful music at my wedding, which meant so much to me. And he was there playing the gong. And sorry, my husband's making noise in the background. I'm like, come on, I'm trying to talk here. And he's just one of those people who was just a lovely, wonderful person. And I remember I hadn't talked to him for a while, and I went to the Lotus Festival, and I actually thought of him while I was at the Lotus Festival because I'm an Indonesian music person, and he liked my post, and I was like, oh, Loren, I wonder how he's doing. I've got to call him. And then unfortunately, I found out he had passed. So I just want to say he was just that kind of person who was always willing to help people, always willing to say hello, always willing to share his music and to be enthusiastic about your music. And anyway, I always thought it was funny how I met him. So And just also the UCLA ethnomusicology department was like the most lovely, wonderful people. They were just like, we know that you love music, so come and hang out with us. And it was great. So anyway, thanks for letting me take that moment.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Let's see. Robert, did you want to say something?
I would love to. Thank you. Yeah, Loren was a dear friend. I would stay at his house during NAMM shows, and they would stay at our house during chaotic times. Meaning he had a girlfriend for a while, and I was sort of the therapist occasionally during that period. And we knew each other since I think around 1988. I was down working with Steve Roach on an album. We were mixing my parts for Dreamtime Return, and Loren came by to say hi, and we just hit it off. And we never actually did an album together ourselves, although he would send me rough mixes of things and ask my opinion. I had I had copies of his two unreleased albums right now, which I'm happy to hear. There's that maybe Chuck will release. How Dark is Dark. There's another one called Bronze Garden, which I hope is going to have the light of day. I'm unfortunately one of the two people who found out that he was passed at his house. I got a call from Jesse Sola on the Tuesday before his discovery, saying that they were expected to talk and he hadn't heard from him. And could I try reaching him? And so I tried all day long to try reaching him. And Jesse and I communicated that maybe it was time to call a wellness check. And that's unfortunately when they discovered his passing. We knew that he had no immediate family, and we were very, very worried for his solitude. I'm overjoyed to know that he has a cousin in Kentucky. Thank you, Leland, for giving us some confidence that there's somebody to help clean up. It certainly made me very self-conscious about the challenges of not having immediate family around. I think it's something that all of us became more aware of after his passing. And so I'm grateful for that reminder. And yes, I think everybody remembers him primarily as a very gentle soul and a very creative, kind, and quiet person. And so I just wanted to say that and to share my thanks for knowing him all these years.
All right. Well, thank you for that. In the chat, I've been asked to talk about his passing a little bit. I have limited information. Apparently, it seems like Loren had been having heart issues that he wasn't telling everybody about. And he had mentioned it to me a couple of times, but he always downplayed it, and it didn't seem like it was an immediate problem or a big problem. And yeah, but I guess that's what happened. It was a heart attack. I talked to him on Monday night, and he was fine. And then Thursday morning, I got Robert's message, and so yeah, and in that time, I guess he had a heart attack, and apparently he was on his couch watching TV when it happened. So I can't really think of a better way to go, to tell you the truth. Wasn't in a great deal of pain, wasn't in the hospital, not a prolonged experience for him. And as sad as I am that he is gone, I am glad that he didn't suffer. So that's really all I know about that. If anybody has any other information, that would be
I
great.
could share what little I know, which is that many of us knew that he had spent several days or week in the hospital around 2018, I think it was 2019, with some emergency heart problems, which I think also resulted in an infection. And so he had shared with me that he was dealing with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and that he was taking insulin. He had admitted to Jesse Sola that he was also kind of being naughty that week and picking out on candy. So who knows? We speculated that it could have easily has been like a diabetic coma or something. But heart attack sounds most likely because he had some issues with that in the past. But yes, some frailty there that he was hiding as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there anybody else that would like to chime in before we finish here?
Hi. I was just going to mention two things. One, like you and like so many people, I was the recipient of a mixtape from Loren at a very formative period in my life. And his willingness to share music and his love of music really was extremely meaningful to me. And not just that, but like you were saying, Richard, he was the first person I actually met who I could see was making music in a way that um, I hadn't even imagined before. And I had been taking classes at Long Beach City College, so I kind of knew how things worked and the processes and all. But to see him actually doing it was really inspiring to me. And yeah, that photograph of Point of Arrival, that was definitely taken by me. That was an awesome trip that he and I had out to the desert, burying that thing, and people still talk about it with sort of like aghast horror that he would have had the audacity to bury a precious Oberheim synth in the dirt and the sand of the desert. But yeah, he was just a hollow husk that didn't make quality control. Um, and also, he had a lot of little odd jobs over the last several years. And when he was between jobs, I was able to get him into where I work, doing AV tech stuff. And it was nice, even though we had different schedules and didn't see each other all the time, it was nice having him there. And a lot of the people who we worked with knew him but didn't know his history and his many releases, and some people were quite shocked to learn about that part of his life, and then I was just talking recently with a musician that played regularly on Wednesday nights, which is when Loren worked, and he told me that he and Loren had many long conversations about eclectic music. So I was very happy to hear that. So um, yeah, I'm really touched and moved to hear all the stories and um, hear the music and just get the feelings from everyone. So thanks.
Thank you, Sander. So, Titus, did you want to say something?
Okay, just a few things. Um, I've known Lauren about as long as you folks have, but I've never been as close. He was one of those people who would pop up here and pop up there, and I would bump into him at a concert. Um, I would hang out at his place. He would come to concerts that I put together. I wrote about him when I was writing for Keyboard Magazine way back in 1987. Um, and there are these presences in one's life that are sort of reassuring that, oh, they'll be there, they'll be around. I'll come back to Long Beach and say hi to Lauren and a couple other people I know there. And when that begins to unravel, it's disorienting. Um, all of us are at the ages now where we're running into this more and more. So I really appreciate what Richard's done and the rest of you chiming in. I really liked what Leland had to say, where he was able to put together all of these little points and then say it didn't make sense until Lauren was just a little kid, and then he wasn't. And this is just thinking about what life is and how our lives are connected and where we pop up in people's lives, and that someone who's not that well known, but shows up at someone's wedding and brings Gao, and that's something that becomes impressed upon that person's life. in an ongoing way. It's just fascinating to me how that works out. I mean, Loren was one of those guys who just floated here, floated there, and just made good music, paid attention, listened carefully. Um, and like I said, we had these intersections at various times. Long Beach City College, um, concerts in Long Beach of various sorts, concerts that we went out to, not together, but we bumped into each other. Um, the Indonesian gamelan at the Arboretum in 1990 at the Los Angeles Festival, which turned out to be a really big deal for a lot of us because it was the first time we'd ever seen all night wayang kulit. So these sorts of things were places that Loren and I intersected and affected one another. So he, like I say, he was this presence that would pop up and hover and string certain things together for me. And I'll miss that. I'll miss that when I come back to Long Beach because there's almost nobody I know in Long Beach, even though I grew up there. Things just kind of float away. I don't live in the US anymore. So when I come back and I don't have those contacts and those people to see, like I said, things just sort of float apart. It's a strange thing. There's a couple of people here who are immigrants, I think. And it's a strange thing to be an immigrant because when you go back, what you remember is not what's there.
Mm.
So anyway, calling in from the Philippines with thunder rolling overhead. Thank you very much for putting this together.
Thank you, Titus. I should point out Titus started a group when we were at City College called COMA, the California Outside Music Association, which is now sort of legendary in avant-garde music circles, at least around this area. So thank you for that, Titus. Ravi, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you. I'm Ravi. I had the pleasure of knowing Loren and being friends and working together in music for since the mid 2000s. And I find myself right now, I don't know how loud it is for you guys, but I'm in a very reverberant space right now. And it seems pretty fitting to be able to just talk with him a little bit here. People, everyone here has spoken. It's been nice to hear what I've been able to hear about their friendships with him, and I wanted to just share. It's so interesting to have a friend where so many interests cross. I went to UCLA for my bachelor's. He had already graduated with his master's and was still involved with the music scene there. He was working in the department there. I was learning gamelan. He was helping with all of the beginners at that time. And then later on, I got to compose music with him and learn about his process. I also got to see him perform with his modular synth, which it was very difficult to move around. And he didn't really talk about his performances very much, but it was such a pleasure to be able to not just hear something he had spent time making that he felt was ready, but to also to hear him share music that he was making in real time. And then our projects together, I feel like I was always throwing him huge challenges. My primary musical background is in North Indian music, and we started working together as Shamala said, for Postnatyam, and our musical styles were very different, and he was so generous and gracious to work together and to be patient. A lot of the stuff that we were making at that time, mine was very rhythmic. His was very ambient. And there was a project where I needed something to fall in time, and we couldn't get the synth, like a synth key to work properly. And so I had to manually input all of the sounds for this piece, one after the other in this track. And it took a very long time. And he grumbled a little bit in the way that he would, but was very patient and was always game for things. Later on, I got to work on my own projects with him. I got to hear how he wanted to take things. He ended up working quite a bit with some of the friends that we recorded earlier on some of my projects. And so he also expanded to working with the Afghani community in Orange County. Recorded a couple albums for them and helped them with their musical scene, which really only exists in this area, in that capacity. So I just wanted, and then with Gamelan, continuing, he was very involved with Ilburatwangi, which I had also joined later. And it was so nice to have him bring his personality and share all of his knowledge, thoughts. We all know he'd share his feelings when he felt warmed up to someone. And so I appreciate his friendship for that. And thank you for having this time together to share these thoughts. It's nice to be together with his friends.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice. All right. Unless there's anybody else that wants to chime in. Nope.
I was just going to briefly mention one more thing, and that is that if you don't have access to Loren's music, a lot of it is available on Bandcamp under his name. A lot of his albums, I don't know if it's all of them, but a bunch of them are there. And I've been listening to them pretty much nonstop in the last couple of weeks. But even before his passing, it was a great way for me to, like, when I'm driving around, just play his music, which is always such a joy to listen to. So yeah, avail yourself of that if you want to. It's a great resource, and it's all up there, free to listen to. So
I've also found it on Apple Music.
Yep.
Yes.
Hey, yes. Lee?
Am I alive on here?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for their participation. I elaborated somewhat on the family context, so I should happily say on behalf of the family, and there are folks out there, I'm still finding them. We're grateful for the friendships that you shared with our cousin. Thank you much.
Thank you. Joe, did you want to say something?
Yeah. I know Loren, I like to call it the BE years, before electronic music.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was in that group of photos from high school when, in my mind, Loren was a tuba player. And, in those pictures, playing Dungeons and Dragons and attacking our school auditorium. But one of the joys for me was being there in that period of time in his life when he discovered his love for electronic music and his love for recording studios, and living with Richard and watching the two of them, drool over studios that no longer exist, because people record in their bedroom now, was an exciting time. And, I remember going to concerts and Loren making his pilgrimage to the stage before a show to see what keyboards were on stage. And I'm horribly sad that I missed the Oingo Boingo show where Loren made his way to the stage. And as the lights went out, he felt space open up around him and did not realize that he was in the beginning of what would become the Oingo Boingo mosh pit.
Sorry to interrupt. I have to chime in. I was standing next to Loren when that happened, and I was expecting it, but he certainly was not. They came on stage all at once to Only a Lad, and the entire audience turned into a slam pit. And I looked around and he was gone, and then I saw him running for the bleachers in the back of the hall. Yes, that was a great moment. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
But so it was an amazing time to be there in those early years of Loren's life, and thinking to myself, what the hell is ethnomusicology? And then finding out what it was and going, oh, that's perfect. And remember Richard going, if you could just let me add a dance beat to some of this, we could make some money. But I went on, our lives grew and separated and stuff. And I went on to become a public school teacher. And I had this annual meeting with Loren at UCLA because as a fourth grade teacher, we would get invited periodically to these arts festivals at UCLA. And I would always call Loren and say, hey, I'm going to be on a busload of fourth graders coming up. You want to meet? And we'd meet and walk campus, and he'd show me around his world while my kids were eating lunch. And, it was fun to see him in that environment, in that world. And ironically, the last time I went, I was like, where the heck are you? And at that point, he was in the middle of education, political strife, which I knew all too well, having met a teacher in UTLA in Los Angeles. And, it was like, why aren't you here? This is the year they're taking us to see a gamelan group. And walking into that theater with 30 fourth graders, I felt it was my duty to sort of convey the respect for what we were about to hear and really let that group of kids know that this music is important. And, knowing other music exists was important for those kids. So it was just, hearing all the people that played gamelan with him and missing the chance to see gamelan with him on the one day that he was out on strike or something, it was kind of heartbreaking. But he assured me, no, they're fantastic. You're going to love them. So that was just a very unique, my way of connecting with him periodically. And I will always remember those trips to UCLA.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And also, Joe, thank you so much for introducing me to Loren. I mean, it's just overwhelming, the experiences I wouldn't have had if that hadn't happened. So thank you. All right. All right. So I think it's time to call this to an end. Thank you, everybody, for all of your input. And thank you for joining me and saying goodbye to Loren. And I will make something of this and put it up online and put a link on Loren's Facebook page, probably, tomorrow. So if anybody else wants to share it, and that's it. So thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard, for putting this together.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everyone, for showing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard.
Mm-hmm. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Have a wonderful day.